for the uninitiated, maybe you can start with a kind of 101 explanation. What is electroacoustic and acousmatic music?
um, I mean, I could say like to the very basically, it's electroacoustic. It's a style of music, but what it means, like basically, it's just sound coming off a speaker, like instead of having it played live by like real instrument. So that is like a very basic like definition of what it would be. But then also I'm not like an expert of electroacoustic, even though I compose that. Uh, to me, it's really to, you know, uh, play with sound and have the freedom to kind of compose music with like any sound that I want. And it can be like more traditional instrument. On my album, I have pieces of music made with cello sound and flute sounds, but on other songs, it's completely, like everyday objects. I don't know, might be a glass of water that I hit to get some notes, might be I had a broken fan that was making a super cool sound. So I recorded it and used it in a lot of my music to create percussion. So, well, to me, it's just, I don't know, a very fun kind of music in which it is, I have the freedom to use any sound to create any like kind of like sound art and like sound stories and things like that.
There is a kind of playfulness involved in work of this nature that I think people sometimes overlook. It's
Mm.
often seen in very serious terms, right?
Yeah.
Challenging music. But it is just such a perfect place to experiment and try things and yeah, have some fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process like for you?
Uh, it depends on the song. Like on that album that I just released, there are some older songs. Like the oldest is 2016, I think. So I was doing my bachelor's degree. uh, but I still like that song. I reviewed it, and I kind of make it with more of my skills of now. But at that time, I would say it was more the beginning of kind of my journey as a composer. So it was a bit kind of like, okay, I'll go with my intuition, which I still do. But now I really like to kind of make a plan. Usually, I like to make a visual plan for myself on how I want the piece to go. So one of the last piece I composed, there are like roughly three parts. So I really draw uh, kind of a it's kind of a visual score, and I do not like hold myself like super strictly that I have to follow it. If I want to go somewhere else, I can. But this helped me to kind of say, okay, I want to do that with those like ideas. Some things that inspired me right now. I'm inspired a lot by interspecies relationship and different environmental issues. Uh, so I might go from those ideas, the plan I draw, and then I'm really like, I like to be really organized. So I will then like say, okay, what do I need to like record? What sound do I need to record? And then I will have like recording sessions. And then I have like folders with sounds. And then when like everything is ready, like I have all of my sound, category of sound, and I can really like go maybe more into intuitive process of composing, following like my rough visual score, but then really play with the ideas I want to express to the sounds, and just the kind of happy accidents that happens too when I don't know, you put two sounds together, and then so I there's two parts, one very like more like strict and organized, and then the more like, okay, everything is ready, I can play. Yeah.
This interaction between people and other living things is central to a lot of the work that you do. What's the origin of that?
Uh, um, the origin of that, I don't know. I guess it's a lot of things. Uh, so yeah, I'm a composer. I make music, and right now I'm doing my MFA too. So I'm more like a multidisciplinary artist. I make installation and I make electronics. And I don't know, at some point also it's kind of, maybe it's like a boring answer, but I have to find my master thesis like subject. But then I was like, what really interests me? It was kind of a good reason then to really be like, what interests me the most? So what do I really want to explore? And I've always been like interested in non-human beings and our relationship with them and the environment. And it also happened that it's kind of funny. 2 years ago, my brother had a pet rabbit, a bunny. He couldn't keep him anymore, so I adopted him. I didn't plan on adopting a rabbit, but now I have two rabbits, and I I I'm in like a continuous process of questioning myself, how is the best way to like cohabit with them. It's funny because I don't know, I guess some people maybe they don't have uh they have a strong bond with their pets, but it's not maybe like a deep like research of what is our relationship, what does it mean. But there's something interesting to me about, uh, power dynamics between species, and especially with pets. Like, I don't necessarily explore that in my work, but what interested me, to what pushed me to think about my relationship with my pets was really also the fact that they are pets. And what does that mean? Say they are not object there for my entertainment. I live with them. They are just beside me now. That's why I look on the side. But so I guess the origin of my interest in interspecies relationship as kind of a main theme of interest is, yeah, those things, and reflecting on what questions I ask myself naturally, and what interests me, what comes naturally. That was like a main thing.
I think animals, a relationship with animals, pets or otherwise, has taken on a new kind of relevance from a mental health perspective. I think we better understand what positive effects they have on us. And
Hmm.
with all that's gone on in the last few years, that's been a pretty special thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. They really changed my COVID time.
You mentioned the different forms of work. You do create sound art installations, assembled media. Is there a through line that connects all of that work, or are you just interested in different ways of expressing yourself?
A true line.
Is there something that brings all of that work together? Is there what connects those different styles of
Hmm.
art for you?
But I really started doing music as a teenager, but playing a musical instrument. And I continued, in university. And then at some point, I don't know, I think when I compose music, I like to compose in a way that is not visual, but that tells a story that you could like easily imagine something. So I guess at some point there was a part of me that still really want to make sound art and music, but wanted to explore other type of art making too. And electronics and robotics is something that I've always wanted to do, but I was kind of scared because I don't really have. I had some little classes here and there, like electronics and sensors, but yeah, it seems very like, yeah, scary and complicated, but well, I began my MFA, and what I suggested I would do at the beginning of my MFA was electronics. So then I was kind of like, okay, well, I will have to learn. um, I would say that the connection between all of these art practices is I don't know, they are all like useful creative tools to create worlds. And what I like about installation is that I can bring, sound art, I can bring video if I want to, I can bring electronics and really create a world that, is multifaceted, that speaks to different senses. So I feel like it was always there at some point that I would go outside of sound and music only, even though sound is a medium that I really like, and I think by itself is a very, very strong medium, like very emotionally, like strong, can touch people very strongly, can evoke strong memories. But I don't know, just electronics in itself, I'm just amazed, I guess, like a little kid of a robot that moved by itself. So I wanted to do something like that, just to build something and then see it exist, and walk around. And I don't know, I guess I'm also fascinated by the feeling of aliveness and non-organic beings, things maybe that we don't consider alive in a traditional way, but they still like emit some characteristic that usually we apply to alive beings. So I don't know, movement or like reaction, interaction. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to not restrict myself to a single medium and create more like just a multisensorial works.
The other key theme that comes across in your work, and I know is important to you, is intersectionality, a term that dates back to the late 1980s, but one that has certainly taken on a new kind of importance in the last decade or so. What's your interest there, and how does it inform your work?
Yeah, I think intersectionality and is something that I guess I don't think of it directly when I make my work, but that it's there, like whether I want it or not. When I make a work and I reflect on, I don't know, how I'm going to approach it, what is kind of my point of view. If I'm doing, I do works and I say I explore interspecies relationship, but then something that is hard for me, that makes my thinking and my research kind of like go in infinite direction, is like, okay, well, I make a work and I talk about humans' relationship with other species, maybe of a more egalitarian worldview, but my work, I think, at the end of the day, will forever be anthropocentric, from my own point of view, from my the point of view of a human being, and point of view of a cisgender woman, a white woman also. So I think that to me it is important. Intersectionality is important in a way that I know I really like share my point of view, and I want to be careful not to, like continue to spread either like stereotypes or like a very either anthropocentric or whitewashed view. There's a lot of course, there's a huge history of, you know, interspecies relationship and a more horizontal way of seeing the world that is highly connected to indigenous worldviews, and that's something that is super important to consider. And I'm still like reflecting on that and how to talk about those subjects without being like, oh yeah, I'm the first to think about that, how it's important, you know, because I mean, this way of seeing the world has been there like long before me, but long before like our, you know, Western society. So there's a lot of text and articles and books out there that I've read that talks about subjects that interest me, but omit often indigenous epistemologies. So I try to say, just in my research that might lead to ideas for artworks, I try to, you know, diversify where I'm looking at for knowledge, for inspiration, and, you know, just be careful but also sensitive to the reality of things and things that might have been like erased from the past. And when somebody says, this is a new thing, there's good chances that this was not a new thing. It's like a way of thinking that was there, but we just erased, forgot, and rediscovered. So yeah, I don't know if it answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm also interested in your French Canadian background. A lot of unique history there, as we say, a distinct culture. How does that play into all of this?
Good question. I feel like it doesn't really play that much. I don't know. It's hard because I guess that maybe if I was 1 or 2 generation older, maybe would have played more. But right now in Quebec, see, there's kind of that's good. See, that's really my opinion, personal opinion, but there's a huge kind of like movement to like the protection of French language that was already there like for some decades before, but right now, in my opinion, that is pushed by the government in a way that is not like helping, you know, the French language. Is more it's kind of like oppressive laws that are put in place that are hidden as French protection like regulations. So to me, even though like I like that I speak French and I like to observe around me, you know, the specific culture in Quebec. But first of all, being in Montreal, it's very multi-ethnic. It's very a lot of people just for school, a lot of international students, but a lot of people who have immigrated here too. So in Montreal, it's very different than if you go even just an hour away in the suburb. So I like, you know, the particular culture in Quebec. I like the diversity. I think it makes it more lively. At the same time, for me in Quebec, it's very hard to be there and like defend, oh yes, Quebec, we should protect our language or culture, because I know right now it's often tied to a kind of like anti-immigration sentiment, a bit of like a divisive sentiment, which to me it's like the complete opposite of what we should be doing right now, because then it connects to a huge array of other issues, social issues and environmental issues, and I'm like, it's not one way or another. It's not like either you support French and you apply those very strict and oppressive rules, or you don't support French and then, okay, no, that means so maybe there's a middle ground, or many like middle grounds in which like we want people who come in Quebec, for example, who don't speak French to learn it, but then we have to put in place like the system and the structures for them to be able to learn it. I have a lot of colleagues who are here as students. They don't really speak French, and it's, even though they if they want to come to stay here after their school, they should learn French, and it's impossible because then you have to do it like full time. And so it's kind of yeah, but it's it's a very intense subject, I think, in Quebec right now. Always, but right now still in a different manner, and it's a interesting subject. But yeah, for all those reasons, it's not really something that ties to my work right now. It's not really something that my identity as like a Quebecoise is not something that really influence my work, I think, right now. But yeah, it's hard to relate to that when there's a like a hatred sentiments
Yeah, I think
that
that this is a struggle going on in many places, right? Where I think the desire to protect a culture, to
mm,
promote a culture, to explore a culture, um, particularly one like yours with a long history, is it's a wonderful sentiment, but it
mhm,
has at times been connected to a rejection of others, as though you've got to
mhm,
protect that culture from outside influences,
mhm,
which is an awfully hard thing to do, arguably an impossible thing to do in the kind of world that we live in now.
mm,
But yeah, I think this is a very nuanced discussion, and it's not at all clear to me that there is a right or wrong answer to all
yeah.
of this. You know? I was, as a very young kid, in Quebec City during the first referendum.
Okay.
As an Anglo white kid, this you can imagine, right? Like you could feel tension. Even as a young person, I was early teens, I could feel the tension, and it was very, very
Mm,
uncomfortable. It had a profound effect on me. And I, adore Montreal, been there, I don't know how many times. Um,
mm.
and every time I've been in the province, I've had just a wonderful experience. Um, this is all this stuff is just so complicated, isn't it?
It is, and yeah, it is, and sometimes it seems like so they there's issues there, there's like important things, but sometimes there seems to be problems like in the world globally that seem so much more pressing than that, and that are not being taken care of. But yeah, I was not I was only alive in the second referendum, but then I was like too young to realize anything. But say, I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, you were born in Quebec, you heard about it 100 times. That's for sure, which is okay, say, but I've never necessarily felt like a personal connection to those issues. Like, yeah, to some degree, but not like, probably not like, I don't know, um, maybe if I would have been born like 10 or 20 years earlier, maybe I would have a connection more because I would have lived it. But
I
yeah,
think that's true. Yeah, I think
right.
that's true. I think you've been afforded a different kind of life experience
Hmm.
at your age. I also want to ask about the new album. Congratulations. It is really wonderful. And in particular, the title, Lima Song, which is a geometry term. tell us, tell us about how you chose that title.
I guess I was not necessarily thinking about the geometry. I was more thinking about it's, it's really annoying. It's like the last thing I did is find the title because I was like, okay, what's the title of that album? What's that album? And it's with me, I feel it's always one of the other. Either it's the first thing I find or it's the last thing. either of a work or a body of work. And to me, it's really, it's a limaçon, like limace, like a snail, like the animal, but also it, I don't know in English the word, maybe it's the same or similar, but limaçon is like a piece in the internal ear. So to me, it was just like kind of a playful word that I like the sounding of it, that refer to an animal, to a part of the human body, of the human ear. So yeah, it's not a super profound title. There's no like deep meaning, but I just liked it. But in a way, I think it also connects to how I like to be playful, you know, with my music and my art. And like you said earlier, I think electroacoustic really often has this kind of very like serious aura, really something that I don't necessarily like, this kind of elite vibe around that style of music, because oftentimes I feel like people who will do that and call it electroacoustic music is because they went to university. Because then I could call it something different. So I don't like all this seriousness about music and about art. So I try to be playful both in, the title of my pieces, and the choice of my sound. Then if you look at the years of each of the pieces that they were composed, I think the darkest one are the older pieces, and the more recent are maybe more playful. And yeah, mini bestiaire pour la fin du monde, it's like the tiny bestiary for the end of the world. It's kind of like, what's that title? And then you listen and it's kind of like, I don't know, little sounds and like a synth, and it's kind of dancey at some point, and it's okay. But I like to address like intense and important issue, but I don't want to be like, oh my god, it's the end of the world. It's like, oh no, it's too late. I like to play with it and have some sort of hope and some sort of like playfulness, both because I think it's a better way to connect with people, but also for my own like sanity and mental health. Because I think if I was to do art that was exploring like more, I don't know, depression state or dark subject, I would also not necessarily feel good. So I that's also why I like to be more playful in my artistic approach, and the title is, I think, a continuity of that too.